We've all been there. We build an app, send it across, and eagerly wait for people to use it. We receive comments and feedback from people who say that they would use it, it would change their lives, that they will never go back to Excel anymore. However, after a while, we realize that no one seems to be using it, and we're left wondering what went wrong. Our next speaker is here to help us fix that. Skrzydło is a project manager at Appsilon. What that means is she's basically a ninja who can manage chaos like a pro. As a manager, business analyst, and an R-Shiny developer with over 8 years of experience in leading software and data science projects, she can convince anyone in the project to do things that will make the project successful. So let's see what tips and tricks we have to build a user-centric applications.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Reda, for this very good introduction. You can see my slides. Yes, so let's start. So my name is Skrzydło, and I'm a senior project manager here at Appsilon. And today I will be talking about how to build user-centric applications. I wanted to start with the story, and Veda already told the story, so maybe really quickly for those who are just a minute late. So let's imagine that you've built an app and it's perfect. You are sure that that will change the life of your colleagues, of your coworkers, make their work faster, smoother, their decision better, and so on. So you eagerly present it to all your future users. You present all the features and they are happy to see it and they are eager to use it. So then you wait exactly for some signs of success. So people randomly praising your app or just recommending it to next users, but it doesn't come. So you try to check user stats and determine who is actually using the app. And then you see that no one. So why that happens? The app is so great. It can be so helpful and so beneficial for the users. So basically why they aren't using it. So if that sounds familiar, if it ever happened to you, don't worry, bear with me today, and I will show you how to build the apps right from the beginning, the apps that are concentrated around the users, around their problems and their needs, so that once the app is ready, your users are there waiting, really eager to use the app, and the app proves to be very beneficial for them. Okay, so let's jump into it. So I will present you 3 pillars of user-centric applications. And those 3 pillars are prototype, test, and measure. And we'll go one by one. I will show you why this is important, how to do it. I will also give you some tips from my experience, how you can think about those 3 pillars. Okay, so let's start. Of course, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. After the presentation, I will answer them. Or if we won't have time here after the presentation, then I'm also available on the Slack channel, so you can ping me there and I'll be happy to talk with you. So let's start with prototyping. So why do we even want to prototype? And I think the best answer for this is because a picture is worth 1,000 words. And this is exactly it. So when you have ideas, it's much easier to discuss them and to share that ideas for the app or how to solve some specific problems if you can visualize them. And it's also way much easier for your future users to give you feedback on that ideas if they can actually see them and they can say like, hey, okay, but here I'm missing a column that is really important for me to make a decision that I would do here in this step. Or they can say, like, okay, I don't know what's going on here. This needs to be much more easier and much more clear what is happening here on the screen because I have no idea what I'm doing here. So this type of feedback you can get only when people can actually see that and then they can like point out where some things missing or where they would like something to be changed. And also changes are much cheaper when you have a prototype and you iterate over the prototype than when you have app ready, connected to the data, all the reactivity built, and then you need to make some changes. And by cheaper, I mean, of course, it just takes less time to iterate on a prototype than on a ready-made application. So you know why? Now, how to do it. So there are different tools. I think pen and paper is just good enough, and it's a perfect tool for prototyping. Slides like PowerPoint, Google Slides, they're also very good because they allow you to quickly move things around, copy, paste, duplicate, and make some changes. Of course, there's also some dedicated tools like Figma, for example, especially if you need some more details to see and some more like UI design, this is also perfect. And Shiny is also good for prototyping, especially if you, for example, skip the whole server part and you try to quickly move things around in the UI to just check different approaches and see what suits better to the problem your users are having. And I would say, I would recommend you to start with pen and paper and advance the tools as you collect more insights, and you need your prototypes to be more and more detailed, let's say. But by pen and paper, I mean something that is easy to use and it's available to everyone. So if you are sitting in the office in one room and you have a flip chart, then let's use that. Encourage people to draw on the flip chart, to exchange the ideas, comment on them, and so on. But of course, if you are working in a remote setup, then more digital tools will be preferred. So Google Slides or any other type of such simple tool that you can, like, everyone can have access to and everyone can participate and show their ideas so that they can be discussed in a wider audience. This is perfect solution. And then, of course, as you progress, you get more insight. Then you want to also narrow down the options because you are getting closer to the solution. And then you can also add more details and you can use more sophisticated tools and more tools that are more, let's say, dedicated to that. Okay, and a tip from me, prepare multiple versions and try multiple ideas, especially if you are at the beginning of that process. This is when you get crazy creative and you can really test and check different approaches and verify them with the users. Why? Because there's also a psychological trick, let's say. So if you prepare only one version, you will try to convince all other people that this version is good and that why they should like it. While when you prepare multiple versions, you will be more open to feedback and you will be more open to get things that are most important and most valuable from each of those versions. And then you can get to that final better solution that actually suits all the needs. Okay, let's move to the second part, and that is testing. So why do we want to test? Basically, because if you don't test, okay, maybe I start with short explanation. By testing, I don't mean here unit tests or integration tests or any that, let's say, technical kind of testing. I mean testing with the users and checking if what you think the users need and what you think users struggle with is their actual need or problem. So why do you want to test? Because if you don't do it, then actually everything you know or you think you know about your application is just an assumption. And even if you are one of the future users of the app, then you need to remember that you represent just one of the approaches to solve the problem and only one way of thinking. So it's much better to cross-check it with your other colleagues and check how they solve that issue, what's important for them, so that when you build the app, it's not only suited to your needs, but it's suited to, for example, the whole team that in the future is supposed to be using this application. And when it comes to how, there are several methods of user testing. Generally, you can divide them by two variables, let's say. So if they are in person or remote, I think this is quite simple. In person, you are sitting in one room with that person that is testing your application. Remote, you are doing that remotely. I think quite popular in today's world. The other variable if the test is moderated or unmoderated. And it means if the test is moderated, then you as the person moderating it, you have control over the process of the test, which means that usually you have some script and you have some tasks prepared for your user, and you are leading the user through this process. If it's unmoderated, you have no control over the process. You cannot change in any way the behavior of the user. So basically, you can just observe, and this is just different type of testing, and you can get different types of observations from that. I listed here those different methods. I won't go into detail in any of it right now. If you have any specific questions about the methods, how they differ, or the benefits, you can put that questions in a chat, and I will discuss that later in the Q&A section. And now let's proceed to the tip. So the tip around testing for me is to have the mindset that when the test fails, you actually succeed. And what I mean by that, it means that the purpose of test isn't to pass it. So you shouldn't be concentrated in making sure that the user can successfully go through all the tasks that you have prepared for them. Actually, you want to discover those tasks, those features that are hard for the user to understand and to use. So in this sense, that test can fail, but then you will succeed, which means you will learn that early enough that something is not intuitive enough, that there are some issues with the user experience, for example, and you can fix it. And that's your success because you know it now, and not in a year, for example, when you will discover that no one is using that feature because they basically cannot. So keep that in mind. Don't be afraid that your tests will fail. It's okay because you are learning them there then. Okay, and the last part, so measurement. Why do we even want to measure? So we want to measure the app usage because there is a bunch of questions that we should know the answer to. And those questions are, how many users do we have? How frequently they use the app? How much time they spend in the app? Which functionalities are the most popular? What's the part of the day or maybe week when the users use app the most? How many concurrent users do we have in the app? And many, many more. And there are several tools that you can use to measure the usage of your apps. If your app is deployed in POSIT Connect, you can use Server API and get the data from there to build your own tools, your own reports. The data that you will find there is the start and the end of the user session, and also who was the user, if the user is logged in, of course, in POSIT Connect. So I would say the scope of the data is limited, but the very big advantage of this API is that you can get all the historical data. So if you have the app deployed, and you will, and it's deployed for a year right now, let's say, and you try to get the data today, you will get all the historical data from that year, and this is great. Other tools like Google Analytics or Matoma, so they will allow you to gather more, let's say, in-depth statistics from your apps, like, for example, which functionalities are used the most, which tabs, which buttons are clicked the most, and so on. So a bit more information. Of course, you can get the data only from that day when you actually start using it. So you won't have access to any historical data, but still it's beneficial to be able to analyze the behaviors in the app a bit more. There are also several packages like Shiny Telemetry, Shiny Logs that you can use within your Shiny apps to gather the user statistics. And one disclaimer here, Shiny Telemetry is the package that is actually built by Appsilon, and we plan another, let's say, round of development there. So there will be a lot of things happening around this package. So stay tuned, check the repository and check our blog, because for sure we'll be sharing some updates there. And the final tip about the measurement, you need to remember to actually take action based on the results, because only then it's powerful, right? So if you know that there are, let's say, 10 team members that are supposed to use your app, and you see that only 3 of them is using that, then if you only monitor this situation and that number, then actually probably nothing will change, or the probability of that is very low. But when you actually know that, you have this measured, and you can go to that users and ask, hey, do you know that this app even exists? Maybe you don't have access, or maybe I can show you something, maybe I can help you with something, or maybe there is anything that you're missing in this app and that actually makes it useless in your case. So this is when the measurement and the data that you have gets actually beneficial and actually brings the value, when you are able to take action based on what you see in the data. Okay, so summary, 3 pillars of user-centric applications that we've discussed today: prototyping to know what to build, testing to check the assumptions, and measurement to know when to take action, and of course, what action to take. And that's the end of my presentation. You can contact me at my Appsilon email. Thanks a lot. And now I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thanks for the wonderful talk, Anna. I see so much love for the visuals in the chat section. Maya wanted to know, for the tests, how do you make the user feel comfortable enough to try and get things wrong?
Yeah, this is a great question. So first of all, be prepared with the introduction and make sure that you explain the user the goal of the test, that you are not testing the user, because this is what people are very often afraid of, that they may fail. They don't fail, like the app can fail, but actually when the app fail, then we all succeed. So it's all good. So it's very important to explain it to the user. And I believe in order to be able to explain it in a good way, you just need to prepare for it in advance and have it ready. So when I was running the test, I really had the script, like word by word, what I wanted to tell. Of course, I needed to read it many times before to make it also sound natural. But I think this is all about informing the user.
Okay. We've talked about testing from the developer's perspective throughout the conference. User testing seems to be very intriguing. Can you talk more about how to approach this?
I'm not sure if I understand the question, like how to approach it. You mean like how to convince people, or?
What are the different methods of user testing?
Okay, so maybe let me get back here. If we can share the slides once more. Okay, so you can also see the most. Okay, so different types of testing. So let's say example hallway tests. This is when you randomly ask people to perform some small actions in your app. So you can actually sit in a hallway and ask different people to do something very small in your app, and just so it's moderated. You have a task for them and you're observing what they are doing. It usually needs to be very small. You can also sit in the office kitchen, for example, and ask people there. Lab usability testing, it's a bit larger. So you encourage people, or you invite people to come to it's called lab, but it can be your desk. But the thing is that this is, you are controlling the environment when they are doing that. For example, you can provide them the laptop on which they are testing the software, and you have the full script with the tasks, and you are asking them to perform several actions. Make sure that you communicate in the language of the user, and you have business tasks for them. So you don't have tasks like click the yellow button, but rather create a sales report for January, for example, because this is the question or the task that they will have in their head when they are opening your app. Here, phone video interview, very similar. You have the tasks prepared, but you are just not in person and there with them. I encourage you, if you are doing the video interview, to ask users to share their screen. Then you can see what they are actually doing and you get much more insights. For the observation, you are just observing how people are using your app. So they use it in their own environment. You don't interrupt. You don't influence the process in any way. And this is also interesting. So session recording, tools like Hotjar, for example, enable you to record what's happening on the screen when a person is using the app. Thanks to that, you can have many recordings, and Hotjar can create some heat maps for you, for example, to see which parts of the app are the most popular, for example. But to be honest, when I was using that, the most insights that I got was from actually rewatching the recordings and just seeing when people I thought were struggling, because of course you don't see facial expressions of people. So, you don't communicate with them. You don't know if they are frustrated or maybe they're just moving around their mouse because they're talking with someone who just came to their desk. But generally, you can also get a lot of insights from the sessions, especially if you're willing to watch them later and analyze. I hope
Awesome.
that helped.
Tanya wanted to know, are there some key measurements you recommend to focus on?
So it all depends really on the app. And what I recommend is to sit before we start measuring, to sit and decide what's interesting for us and what's interesting for this app. Is it number of reports? Is it number of users, number of sessions, or maybe time spent? And time spent, this is funny because we may want to increase it, but on the other hand, if this is something that should speed up the process of doing something, then we may also want to decrease it. So it really depends on what is the app actually, and what are the goals. But I think what's really important is to have this goal in mind, because then you can compare against that goal or benchmark, or like what you were thinking, and then if this is like it's more than we thought, it's less than we thought, like if we need to do something, or are we just doing fine.
Okay. Have there been any situations where you were surprised that the user did not understand the functionality?
Yes, of course. I mean, this is very common, and this is I think it happens to everyone. Like, I would be surprised if someone would say, no, I create the apps only that people always understand. And this is because when we are working on the app every day, we start, thinking in some schematic way. Like some things become very natural to us, but we spend so much time with the app that I think it's just natural. And then there is a person who has never seen the app and they try to do something and it's like, how it should be working. So it happened, and I think it's also natural. And this is why we need that process of testing, and we can test even the prototypes, of course. So like before we start actually implementing, to show the prototype to the user and ask them about their feedback and how if they can perform the actions. Also, when you have prototypes, you can have let's say some reactivity in the prototype. So even if this is pen and paper, you can ask the user, you can put the elements on the page and ask the user to click something, and then when the user clicks, you rearrange the elements so that the user sees the new screen, for example. And this is also great without any very comprehensive tools to actually test designs and prototypes and the user experience with the actual users.
Okay. So what is your thought process when the app you build does not receive the traction it needs?
I start thinking why, and then I dig deeper into the data. And I'm by education and by some experience that I have, I'm just data analyst. And I believe a lot of people in Shiny community are also analysts. So I think this is quite natural for us to work with data. And this is what I would also encourage you to do. So when you measure and you have the data, then try to become an analyst and just try to analyze them. So for example, I had one very interesting case when I saw in the data that there is a lot of very, very short visits, like a couple of seconds. And I started analyzing that. And then I found out that actually the way the app was loading, because we are using some external authentication system. So the way app was loading, actually each session was divided into...
my experience of...
Sorry, something got broken. Yeah, so I discovered that each session was split into 2 sessions. So that first for user logging to the app, and the second one for that actual session. So, this is, you get the data, you start working with them, and then you look for the reasons. So I think this is pretty much what the data analysts do.
Okay. Another question from Maya. Do you create tests to match one-on-one to feature requirements of the app? Like if the app needs to create some model, then you make sure that the user can do it, or there are tests to more or are there tests more granular, like finding a single button and just seeing if you put it as at a intuitive place, or both?
I'm trying to understand the question. So the question is, how detailed are those user tests, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
So I would say it's about how what questions or what tasks the user have in their mind when they open the app. So what I was doing is that I was actually, before having tests, I was speaking with business users of the app, and I was confirming the language, also the actual tasks and the questions that user have, to make it natural for the users, that they hear the research question, for example, and they're like, okay, this is what could come to my mind. I know, I understand this question. So then I try to find the answer in this app. So I would say, as a rule of thumb, think about it this way: how the user thinks, what they need, what is their problem that they are trying to solve when they open your app.
Okay. I can see people getting attached to ideas and not experiment too much while building MVPs. Do you have tips to avoid that during the prototype stage?
So yeah, I think build many prototypes when you start. So this is exactly why you shouldn't start, especially at the beginning, with only one prototype, because then this is the version that you are emotionally attached to, and you are trying to convince other people that this is the best they can have. So like try different versions. Try to force yourself not to have one and then edit it to create the second one, but to prepare a completely new piece of paper and start right from scratch. And yeah, I think this is the best way to not get too emotionally involved in one version, but actually be open to multiple versions and being creative.
Okay. One last question before we wrap up. What tools do you recommend for people drawing out the prototypes for those who don't excel at drawing?
I would say, yeah, PowerPoint, Google Slides. These are really great tools. You can use them, like using them online is of course very good choice because everyone can see it. If you were offline and you are in a meeting, then I would encourage everyone, like you don't need to be, an artist to draw a prototype. These are, just sketches like rectangles, maybe some circles. It's really easy. It doesn't need to be perfect. The only goal is that other people can visualize like what you have in your mind. So don't be too worried about that. But if you really like, I don't know, don't want to draw anything, then yeah, just slides are, I think, perfect for that. And they are very also good for duplicating, copy pasting, moving around. So also have a lot of advantages.
Awesome. Thank you for answering all the questions. And if you
Thanks.
have any more questions, you can reach out to Anya in the Slack Ask the Speakers channel.
Yeah,
Thank you.
exactly. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.